Hi, we're talking about Your Money Matters on NDTV Profit, and my name is Alex Matthew. When it comes to the Employee Provident Fund, there are a lot of myths out there, and it is an often misunderstood product. Of course, if there's one thing that most people agree on, it's that it's one of the best products for compounding of retirement corpus, especially obviously for an employee. And it accumulates under the surface, under the radar, and before you know it, there are several lakhs of rupees that you've accumulated that hold you in good stead when you do have to retire. Join me to talk about a few of the myths and to give you a little bit of insight as to how to manage these funds. I'm joined today by Ketan Das, who's the business head, Provident Fund at FinRight Technologies. Ketan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you,
The
Alex.
first, and I think one of the most interesting myths out there, and this is not really something that is necessarily, how do you say it, completely inexplicable. It's actually a pretty rational myth to have, is that you don't gain any interest if you haven't contributed to the Provident Fund in 3 years. First of all, is that true, and how does it work?
Sure. So it is a myth, like we mentioned. You do get interest beyond 3 years as well. We'll explain it through three scenarios. Scenario one is if you've left the job before turning 55. So let's say you left the job at 45 years old. Then you continue to get interest till the age of 58. Let's take another scenario where you've left the job after turning 55 age. Let's take the example of, let's say you're 57 years old and then you stopped contributing. Then you get interest for 3 more years, that is till 60. And there's a third case. Let's say you've left the job and you moved abroad. In that case, you will continue to get interest only for the next 3 years. So partially, yes, the 3 years thing still stands, but it's only in the couple of scenarios that we discussed.
Okay, no, I need to understand this as well. So in which scenarios does it exist and which scenarios does it not exist?
So in the first scenario, like you mentioned, if you've left at the age of 45, then you're continuing to get the interest till the age of 58. Then the 3 years doesn't hold true there.
Yeah.
But in the other two scenarios, if you're moving abroad or if you've left after the age of 55, then you only get the interest in 3 years.
Yeah. Basically, if you stop working at any point in your career and you've contributed to the Provident Fund, you can choose to have it accumulate till the age of 58, and you will earn interest on whatever the principal is. Is that right?
Correct.
And if you've moved out outside the country, you will then, in whatever case, only earn interest for a period of 3 years if you're not still contributing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's an important consideration to have. The second myth is that you don't have to pay tax on interest if no TDS has been deducted. So first of all, this relates to the contribution that has been made, I think, related to the employee's contribution, if you have had the ATC, right? Is this what the myth is about?
No, I'll explain it a little bit. Like you mentioned, you continue to get interest till the age of 58. But the important consideration here is whatever interest you're earning, it's going to be taxable. So essentially, the interest that you're getting is income at your hands, and you have to declare it in your income tax as income and then pay taxes as per your tax slabs. But the catch here is that EPFO doesn't really deduct a TDS or a tax deduction at source when you're giving interest if the contributions have stopped. So essentially, it's a do your own, calculation and map it to your ITR so that you, later in the stages, you don't get an income tax notice saying there was an interest component in your Provident Fund. You're supposed to pay taxes, but you haven't paid. So it's better to say it upfront.
So in which cases does tax apply, in which case does tax not apply? Can you spell that out, please?
Sure. So like you mentioned about contributions. So all contributions up to 2.5 lakhs per annum, the interest earned on it will not be taxed. Let's say you've contributed 3 lakhs in 1 year, then up to 2 lakhs 50 is exempt. The tax, that interest that you earn on the 50,000 extra will be taxed. I repeat, only the interest is taxed. Here, EPFO will deduct a 10% TDS and later you're supposed to declare the entire income and pay whatever interest you have as per your tax slabs. So this is one scenario. And the other scenario, like we discussed, if you're leaving the job, you've stopped contributing, then the interest that you earn on your PF will be taxable. Now, in that case, EPFO would not deduct a TDS. You are supposed to declare it on your own and then pay the tax.
Okay. Now, a clarification in the second scenario, does the interest become taxable after 3 years, or is it taxable from the moment you stop contributing?
So, great question. I believe it is from the moment you stop contributing, but we'll have to check on that.
Okay, so we'll have to circle back on this one. The third myth has to do with all PF accounts get auto-transferred when you join a new organization. And I know this one, that doesn't happen. You have to provide your UAN, right?
Correct. So, when you join a new organization, you provide them your Aadhaar details. They try to fetch the UN that is linked to your Aadhaar. And EPFO has recently introduced a concept of auto transfer, in which essentially just the previous organization that you are working for gets auto transferred. The request is auto applied. Please note that the request will still go to EPFO for approval. It's just that the application is online and it's automatic. But the point to note is, let's take an example. Let's say you've worked for 3 organizations, company A, company B, which you're leaving and joining the company C. Now, in this example, like I mentioned, company B's amount or transfer will be raised automatically. But if you haven't merged, or if money is still lying in the first organization, that is company A, that will not get automatically transferred. You will have to initiate it manually.
Okay. Now, an important consideration, therefore, when you are moving jobs or when you are out of a job, is whether or not you should withdraw or transfer, right? And a lot of young people, I think, tend to make the mistake of withdrawing their Provident fund perhaps a little too early, because you can withdraw it after a certain number of years without a problem, right? What is the advice that you would normally dispense?
Right. So technically, if you have not contributed for more than 2 months, you are eligible to withdraw the entire PF corpus. But I would personally advise against it, because there are two considerations that you should think of. First is about taxation. That is, if your total service history in that organization is less than 5 years, then whatever exemptions you have gotten in your Provident fund will be reversed. If you try to withdraw it before 5 years, essentially all the tax benefits will go away and it will be treated as income. So if you fall in a higher tax bracket, you might have to end up paying 30% tax on it. So that is not advisable. The second consideration is about compounding. So EPF, like you mentioned, is a very powerful tool because you don't really pay attention to it, and over the years it accumulates to be a huge corpus. But if you keep withdrawing from that Provident fund, then essentially your service breaks. The interest compounding also stops there. So there is no provision for you to return. For example, you had an emergency, you withdrew a certain amount. Now there is no provision to put that money back in the fund so that you don't lose out on the compounding part of it. So these are two essential considerations that you should keep in mind.
Something that is related to an earlier point that we discussed and also should weigh into whether or not you should withdraw. Suppose there's a gap of a few months between one job and the other. Of course, you have the option of withdrawing, but if you choose to not withdraw, then some of this aspect will come into play, right? So there will be a tax aspect, but over what period does the interest accrue? Is it calculated only on an annual basis? And so therefore, how do you understand the tax aspect of it? Are you required to pay tax for a few months or not? Do you have an answer, or will I have to circle back for this one?
So interest, I'll tell you how it is calculated. It is calculated monthly, but it is deposited annually. So at the end of the financial year, there is a calculation done on what is the interest that you've earned so far, and it is credited into the account. And as far as I've seen, if it's a matter of couple of months and you're joining in another organization, it's most likely going to be in the same financial year. So there is no issue about taxation that comes into picture, but we'll have to obviously, I'll circle back on with the exact answer.
Fantastic. Okay. The last aspect, which is a checklist in the event of a transfer, and we've established that ideally this should be done, right? But
Right.
I'll add another hypothetical scenario. If you are moving from a trust to the EPFO, then what do
Right.
you need to bear in mind?
Sure. So I'll walk you through the regular checklist and then I'll add one more point regarding your trust. So first thing that you should do is it's hygiene. Just try and go if you are able to log into the EPF portal or not. Sometimes there are details that don't match with your Aadhaar and you're not able to log in. So that prevents you from accessing all the online services. So that is the first step. Check if you're able to log into the portal. Second step, go to your service history and check if the previous company that you had worked for has updated your date of exit. And third is whether or not your KYC details match across all organizations. Your name, your date of birth, your gender, your father's name and relationship should match across all the companies. Otherwise, your transfer stands a chance of getting rejected. And third, the fourth point is about EPS. A lot of employees often get confused about this. So it is quite essential that you pay attention to this. It's the employee pension scheme. Two things that you have to check here, whether or not you're eligible for EPS. Second, if you are eligible for EPS, then make sure you're continuing your EPS contributions throughout the companies that you've worked for. Right. And one more point that you mentioned about trust, we can add one more point there. It's that in cases of a trust, you need to have two transfers. One transfer is from the trust where who has your PF amount. So they have to transfer the PF amount into the company that you're going to join. And second is the pension amount. So essentially your PF is with the trust, but the pension component of it is still with EPFO. So if you are an EPS member, you also have to initiate a transfer on the EPF portal. So two transfers in case of trust.
Last question, and you mentioned a couple of scenarios that you should pay attention to when you're transferring, but I think this, just as a matter of hygiene, should be done in any case, even if you're not transferring. What do you do if you can't log in to the EPFO website? And two, how do you check and ensure that all of your KYC documents or information is the same across all platforms?
Right. So, like you mentioned, I agree. There's not a lot of attention paid to EPF, and I believe like it leads to rejections later on. Imagine you're in your retirement age, you're 58, and then you run up into a problem. Now you're supposed to go back to the old company, which may or may not exist. So it's always essential that you do it right now. You should get your PF checked. And about the login issue that I mentioned, in such a case, you can reach out to your company and the company can update whatever details are incorrect. You can provide them the details that is mentioned in your Aadhaar, essentially your name, gender, and date of birth. These are the three things. If they match with Aadhaar and your UAN details, you will be able to log in. So just reach out to your company. If the company has shut down, you might have to go to the EPFO and fill out an offline joint declaration form. And regarding the KYC, if once you have logged in, there is there's an option of manage and go to KYC. There you will find your basic details. You will also be able to check whether your Aadhaar, PAN, and bank details are also updated correctly.
Got it. All right. I think we've covered quite a bit of ground, Ketan, on this conversation. And of course, we've got a few things that you need to check on. And so therefore, once you circle back, we'll have another conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time.